What's up, y'all? It's your girl Nayo, the host of the Meditation Matters podcast, and I am back again with a little bit more of my thought tidbits. And this one is actually going to be thought tidbits slash life experience, which all my thought tidbits are life experiences, but this one is a lot more personal. So I hope to not take up too much of your time today, but I will go off probably on a mild rampage. But give me about like 10 minutes of your time. But anyway, so today's topic is going to be all about accepting your full self. What do I mean by this? I literally mean what I say. Accepting your full self. The self that you may not acknowledge. The pieces of yourself that you may have tucked away. The self that is in the forefront of your conscious mind, that is 100% accepted into your day-to-day characteristics and behavior traits. I'm talking about the complete self, the self in the shadows, right? So we're going to talk about the shadow self and the self in the light. And understanding that is important. It is vital, especially on our healing journey and our life journey in general, to bring this self that we don't talk about, that we don't acknowledge, that we may not even know is there, to bring it into the light, into the forefront. And I'll talk about how we can kind of begin to discover the different character traits of the self that exists in the shadow that we don't know is there, but is very much so there and very much so influencing our day-to-day behavioral processes, things that we are achieving in life and things that we aren't. So to use myself as an example, as you all know, we recently had a full moon experience that was in Scorpio. And just to give a very quick recap of that, Scorpio moon was all about bringing those pieces of the self that exist in a place that you don't like to acknowledge into the light. So everything that you may not like, that you may have deemed as bad or wrong, or even that society may have deemed as bad or wrong because of maybe childhood experiences or whatever that you came across in life, you put it in this box that you, being me, ideally here, right, placed into this box where it was not acknowledged. So for me, I used to have an issue with rage, right? With anger, also a lot of fear of being judged, fear of being too judgmental. I used to also be very depressed majority of my life, so a lot of sadness and just dealing with the thoughts associated with sadness, thoughts associated with not really wanting to be around anymore because, oh my God, I'm tired of being sad, right? As you can imagine, as I mentioned with what this Scorpio full moon was all about, it brought all of this stuff up. Everything that I've ever been kind of placing away or not really paying too much attention to, or just kind of being like, no, it's okay, I don't really want to, not that I didn't necessarily want to deal with it, but I thought that if I just left it alone or ignored it or just continued to focus on the love and continue to focus on all these other different positive attributes of myself, that it would just make all these other things that I deemed as bad or wrong or inadequate of myself, that they would go away. The issue with that is ignoring things, pieces about yourself, ignoring, what you think is bad, or thinking that it'll just go away on its own and you will never have to think about it again because you're putting all of your focus onto the very super positive things about yourself. Thinking that they won't continue to come up in your life in a variety of ways is literally setting yourself up for failure. I can tell you this because it has happened in my life in countless times. So I'll use the rage, for example, because that's one that I've very much so familiar with, and that has come out in a variety of ways throughout my life. I'm kind of like a ticking time bomb, right? I have been, not really anymore, because I kind of went through this very intense shadow work self, which is a big reason why I've been gone for about 2 or 3 weeks now. I had to retreat, right? But basically rage, something, my anger, just anger that also was violent internally, right? Anger that also just was very projecting and also internally eating away at me, right? Pieces of myself that I just deemed as like, well, it's not cool, it's not good to be filled with anger or to have rage, so I'm just going to focus on the love, right? So I would always tell myself, it's okay, like just focus on the love, focus on, loving things, focus on loving experiences. Not realizing that me not accepting and loving the full self of my full self, being the self of me that experiences rage, that has anger, that has these thoughts, instead of me embracing them and accepting them and allowing them a seat at the table, I was pushing them off to the side, and they would come up come out if I was drunk, for example. I could be like a great drunk, like I'd be super happy, right? And then something would tick me off, and then bam, off the rails. There's no filter, no nothing, just putting myself in harm's way because I'm angry, right? And my opinion in that moment needs to be heard, or else I'm going to continue to seethe in anger. Or other situations, right? If I get into arguments with certain people in the past, certain relationships that I've had in the past that may have evoked a certain level of rage and anger, just the way that I manage and maintain that, or handled it in general, right? So there's many different ways in which anger in my life so far has come up and expressed itself in a very unhealthy way. And so it's been imperative for me recently, especially during this recent full moon, to actually acknowledge it, acknowledge it, right? And so acknowledging it as in like, I'm getting this burning sensation in my chest and I'm getting these racing thoughts. This is very familiar to me. It's happened before, it's come up before, and I'm used to just shoving it away. But for some reason this time around, something in me was like, stop shoving this away. I need you to acknowledge this, and I need you to embrace this. And instead of me not listening like I have traditionally, I listened. And for about 2 or so weeks, I was just dealing with like, what does this mean? Like, this can't be good, right? But then after some time of just really dissecting it and allowing it to have a seat at the table and allowing it to have a voice to speak for itself, I began to realize that there are pros and cons, right? That there were pieces of my anger and my rage that historically have been protecting me and allowing me to express myself in a certain way, right? But then also were hindering me from being able to trust, or to be able to have more control, or being able to express my ability to focus and have ambition, right? So there are pluses and minuses to the pieces that we keep in the shadow self. And the shadow self is literally, as I explained earlier, the pieces of us that we may keep in the shadows of our personality. They exist in our subconscious mind. They're not in the forefront of our conscious behavioral actions. And so the shadow self can, harbor pieces of us that are like the creative sides of ourselves, or the rage or the anger side of ourselves, the side of ourselves that is afraid of certain things, but we don't realize why we act a certain way, or why we say certain things, or why sometimes we have no control of what we're doing or what we're saying, because of the fact that they exist in our subconscious mind or our subconscious programming. And a lot of the shadow self, maybe the different character traits that, we each could be expressing, mine being a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, and a lot of anger. A variety of minds came from childhood, right? So it could be various childhood experiences, whether that be your guardians, just whatever you had when you were growing up. These experiences could also have come as you're in your more adult life, right? So they're staking claim in your life, and they're impacting your life subconsciously, right? They're impacting who's being attracted into your life, because these thoughts, these feelings, these behaviors, they also exist on a very energetic level, just like emotions are energy. Emotion being energy in motion, right? And thoughts are also energy, emitting certain frequencies, right? And tuning into other frequencies, and like being attracting like. So it's just like very interesting. And shadow work is very, very important. I'm actually going to link some videos to the bottom that describe shadow work in a really interesting way, and also have a lot of great suggestions for shadow work and how you can begin to get in touch with yourself on such an intimate level, just through a few simple exercises, by allowing yourself to really embrace and understand the different character traits of yourself that you have been shoving off to the side, right? And the reality of is that this whole experience is going to be a vulnerable experience, right? I mean, I've had a lot of talks about the power of vulnerability, and all the interviews that I've done on the power of vulnerability. It truly is powerful to allow yourself to be in vulnerable space. Have I always been the person who enjoys being vulnerable? Not really. But over time, I'm beginning to realize the power of vulnerability and the power that being vulnerable allows me to have. And even if I'm not being vulnerable with another person, if I'm allowing myself to be vulnerable with myself and with my highest, truest, divine self, so much information will be unveiled to me, and so much healing will be able to take place, because I'm opening up that door for healing. I'm opening that door to allow those pieces of myself, that shadow self piece, to come and sit at the table where all the conscious pieces of myself are existing and playing around. So really, like, I just wanted to use myself as an example to say it is super, 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 super imperative for you to take the time to accept yourself, to accept your whole self, to accept your fullest self, to accept the pieces of yourself that you have been shoving away, and to accept the pieces of yourself that you maintain, that you keep in the light. Do you have to let everybody else in on what you're doing? No, you don't. If you feel like you need help, you could seek help from a therapist, from a psychiatrist, from a spiritual counselor. You can also use tools such as meditation, journaling, asking yourself questions, very specific and pointed questions. You can do a ton of different things to help you get to the bottom of this. You can do a lot of visualization exercises. You can do memory work. So for example, one thing that I did recently was tapping into memories of my childhood. And it wasn't that I necessarily was like, okay, I'm immediately going to go to my childhood. It was more so I asked myself the question, what was the first experience I had that kind of lodged this emotion or this thought pattern or this behavior into my subconscious mind. And then I went into a meditation and I allowed whatever memories wanted to come up to come. And eventually I got to like the base memory, and that memory just showed me what happened, right? It showed me that my younger self just having that experience, either being afraid or experiencing an extremely judgmental moment or, being filled with rage because of something. And instead of me getting very frightened or upset or annoyed with that experience in my current adult self, I instead allowed myself to embrace that and to just simply look at that younger self that is me and say, literally, it's okay, and to comfort my younger self, right? So if I'm going to time travel in my head, I'm going back in time to comfort my younger self and say, even though you didn't get that, what you needed from that experience right then and there, I'm here to give you that love. So that's a version of self-love through memory excursion in order to understand where certain subconscious programming and behavioral traits that are coming up for you, that maybe have been coming up all of your entire life for you to address, but you keep tossing it off to the side like how I have been. But once you're finally able and once you're finally open to exploring the pieces of yourself that you have been ignoring, that you have not been paying attention to, that you had no idea were really controlling a lot of the various aspects of your life, once you allow yourself to identify, acknowledge, accept, embrace, and let go of what no longer is serving you, their life really begins to change. And I want to say this, just because there are certain traits about yourself that either you've been telling yourself are bad, the world has been telling yourself that's bad, or maybe you shoved away in order for you to be accepted into the environment in which you grew up in, whatever it is, whatever the reason is why you shoved pieces of yourself away, I want to say that it is imperative for you to do the work and allow yourself to notice them when they come about. You can also take the opportunity to really just kind of experience maybe where these emotions or these experiences may be lodged into your body, right? So just using the simple practices of mindfulness, or better yet, awareness, mindfulness and awareness being the same thing, but I'm just going to say awareness of your body, awareness of your breath, awareness of your thoughts, awareness of where your attention is going, awareness of what's in your life, awareness of who's in your life, awareness of the type of situations that you may be finding yourself in. I mean, there's so many different ways for you to become aware of why you are having the life experience that you're having, why you are having the memories that you're having, why you are expressing the behavior traits that you are expressing. And literally these things, these traits, the shadow pieces of yourself that may have been coming up throughout your entire life, they're not going to stop coming up. They're not going to stop coming up until you address them. And there's going to be pieces of your shadow self that either maybe you're going to say, this has been bad, like my rage, right? And I'm like, okay, well, at some point in time, my rage was protecting me, but now it's causing me a lot of pain and strife, and it's like putting up literal blocks within me to not allow me to express myself in certain ways, to trust in certain ways, to not feel comfortable to be vulnerable, to not do certain things in my life, to not believe in myself, to not believe that I'm deserving, to not believe that I can actually have really meaningful and loving relationships. There could be a wide range of things, right? But what's imperative is to just really understand that it's up to you to be able to allow yourself to have this experience, to accept what's going on with you. And like I mentioned before, I will add a link of a YouTube video that has been very helpful and impactful for me, as well as some books on shadow work that you can go through on your own pace. I do recommend, if you need help, seek help, but if you want to do it on your own, you can do it on your own. If you do need additional help, I do help with meditation, mindfulness, and general spiritual counseling. You can always see me. You can contact me. My information will also be linked at the bottom here. But the moral of the story here is to simply accept your full self. And when you allow yourself to accept your fullest self, you are being authentic, and you're allowing yourself to accept your most authentic and divine self. You're everything. You're your pluses and the minuses. You're all of that. But what's important to do is to go through these minuses that have been shoved away, figure out what actually can be transformed, transmuted for the greatest good of yourself and the greatest good of humanity, and what can simply just be let go of. What no longer serves you at all. It is important to know both, and to be able to let go what no longer, to first acknowledge and accept, embrace, let go of what no longer is serving you, and then to acknowledge, accept, and embrace, and allow what is serving you, or what can serve you in a very positive way, to transform. So for me, I was able to notice how there can be positive traits of my rage, right? So how can I transform my rage to no longer be something that I'm shunning and shaming myself for, but instead I'm allowing the positive aspects of it to come out. What positive traits, what positive adjectives, what positive behavioral characteristics can come out of this, and how can I begin to implement this in my life, right? So healthy boundaries, setting healthy limitations, having healthy expression, being able to have more ambition, more focus, more energy, more whatever it may be, right? So these are the things that I've slowly began to realize that are very positive coming out of my experience with rage that I've been shoving away because I've been ashamed of it. But instead of being ashamed of it, I'm ready to embrace it. And I charge you to embrace your shadow self as well, and to seek help when you need it, and to do the work that you need to do. It's up to you. It'll always be up to you. I always say this: your reality is your experience. And the more that I continue to live my personal life, the more and more that sentence in and of itself becomes completely true and completely real and completely just a part of my new life plan and transformation process. Thank you so much for listening to another one of my tidbits, and stay tuned for the next drop of my episode on the power of thought and thinking, and just how you're in control of your life, and how thoughts can literally be just game-changing for your life. So thank you so much for listening. Feel free to share this with anyone who you think you may need it. Hit the subscribe button if you do enjoy the content that I produce, and hit the thumbs up if you actually like it. But thank you so much for listening, and as always, namaste. Much love, fam.